eventually you get absorbed in and you are Sonic.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to No Repeat. It's a podcast where we pick 3 songs every week with no repeats and no do-overs to create a perfect playlist for every occasion life throws at you. I'm Taylor Olmstead, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Tyler Reed.
You know, we've been doing the show for a bit, and Taylor has consistently been like, our intro is really long. If anyone out there is listening, can you, scale that down for us a little bit? I would have turned it Alchemy like into Wisdom, that's so easy. What's the shortest version you can make of our intro? Hey.
And Sean Evans.
I'm going to make a pitch that we turn Billy Joe Armstrong's into Uncle Timmy Taylor's Super TikTok time. Because that's what we get every time before we come to the show. We just have a bunch of TikToks where we have to live react to them to quote unquote set the scene for the show.
It's true. If you don't watch someone make a casserole out of Big Macs, how will you ever be able to make a podcast?
There's just so much.
Everybody's so creative.
What's the TV show that Rob Dyrdek does where he makes ridiculousness or whatever?
Yes.
That's just it would just be that. We don't need more React content in the universe, unfortunately.
That's true. Tyler, what was our challenge this week?
This week we're challenged to find the perfect emotionally aware metal song submitted by Sean. If you want to submit your own challenge, you can DM us at us, Instagram or Twitter, X, whatever. No Repeat Pod, or we have a Facebook group. No Repeat listing group, or you can always send us an email, norepeatpod@gmail.com. Thanks so much.
Sean, this was your idea. Where did this come from?
I was just curious if you guys had any emotionally aware metal. I feel like it's been more prevalent on the metal scene lately.
Explain what you mean by that.
It's probably like the cross between emo and metal. I know that it's been out there for a while. Your guys' picks are kind of interesting. I'm very interested in how you... I think we're all going to do a little bit of splaining to make our songs fit the challenge.
Also, listeners at home also had no idea what this challenge was. So listener suggestions are going to be kind of buck wild. We got a lot of commentary this round.
So can we put just points on the board right out of the gate? Just... this is a challenge that initially no one understands.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree. I had a lot of trouble initially understanding about this because emotionally aware, does it mean the vocalist is emotionally aware of the subject that they're singing about? So you're singing a song about another person and you're aware that they're a complex human being with their own emotional journey? Or is it
that's called establishing agency metal.
Right.
So you're wrong this week. Tyler, go.
Right. So, but then is it no, I'm aware of my own emotions and I'm trying to reconcile that I am a person with emotions and I am not,
Yes, that was what I was going for.
Okay. That's also what I was going for.
So your B-side was right.
Tyler, what were you after?
I interpreted the challenge as I feel like metal sometimes is a genre that's I feel like this is guilty across genre lines, right? There's sometimes you write music directed at small young men who just very clearly this is for the boys. I feel like a lot of early Blink-182 I would say is not emotionally aware. I would say that they're sort of acting on their primal instincts. I would say that they're not necessarily I feel like their Untitled album, I feel like it's they're thinking about it. They're considering others. And so what I was kind of looking for was I feel like just sort of any metal songs that I felt like subject matter wise I felt like were at least somewhat nuanced, at least had some sort of like emotional interpretation, or had something that like there's a little bit more to chew on than just sort of like rage or fury or power, or like it's about like you're the god of thunder, or like you just make a Warhammer parody band, or like you sing about dragons or whatever, which is really to say that we were taking a big Duke on fantasy metal, which is you know, you could have complexity within your fantasy metal, but it just has a different intent. So I feel like I was just looking for like a metal songs that it felt like just were more personable, felt like a more just like you could glean something from like the narrator's perspective in some way.
I feel pretty similar to that. I think metal, like you said, even when it's not like catered to the teenage boy audience, it sometimes is just like boxed in as being like music of rage, and it doesn't have other types of emotional depth to it. I've been guilty of making that assumption before. I think it's challenging to find metal that doesn't fit that stereotype, but it is out there. It does definitely exist. And it's really interesting to see like what people are doing with metal now. I think, like Sean said, in the last few years, we've really seen more diversity in subject matter and more like interplay with other genres. It's not a genre that I'm particularly like deep into, but I feel like even the bands that I listen to on the periphery of metal are like bringing in more and more diverse influences, which is cool to see.
And I do feel like what is also important is that I feel like lyrical delivery is also very important. I feel like for the whole composition as a total, like you can write lyrics that I feel like are compelling and sort of like, you know, like nuanced, but like if they're sort of like sung in like a sort of like if it is sung in like either like a whiny or sort of like a like sort of like a rage filled, like the intent, there's an additional intent based on how you sing the words. And I think that was also something that I was trying to be aware of, because I feel like there's also something to that texture there, like of like the way that you sing is super important. And I feel like that is another like sort of like where I feel like I wasn't maybe as it was a consideration, but it wasn't something I was weighing that heavily on.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I mean, I think it is something that metal and hip hop share, in that there's a lot of affectation that you can put on the voice in these genres to make different characters or different emotions come across in different ways. And that's something that I've always appreciated about metal, even though personally I find unclean or screamed vocals really unpalatable most of the time.
Right.
I'm glad it's for someone, but
yeah.
It's not for me.
So, which I would say that I feel like if I was to like knee jerk, like shoot from the hip, like if someone said emotionally aware metal, I would probably just throw out Sunbather almost, or Deafheaven's Sunbather almost automatically, just because that's the sort of like, I think it both hits the part of metal that I feel like it has, it sort of is metal, but it also draws in sort of like shoegaze and other sort of like influences. It has a little bit more, it feels like it's evolving the genre in a way, and also sort of like it's very poetic in its lyrical content that I think is also important. And so I feel like without any content, like, you know, without thinking too hard about it, that's Deafheaven would be the band I would suggest for this challenge. But I feel like it's sensitive, as to Taylor's point, sort of like the lyrics or the vocals are sung in a screened fashion. So it's like, it feels like it does lose like a lot of its intent there, like just in regards to this challenge. I feel like it does well, like, you know, like if you can understand the lyrics and you can hear them and you know them, I feel like it'll give you a lot of power. But I feel like on like a first listen, or like a very like sort of like just in the front, I feel like it didn't help itself for this challenge.
Sean, were there any bands in particular that you gravitated towards on this?
Well, this is not going to be a surprise to anybody because you listen into this podcast. I mean, if you're familiar, I went right to Deftones, and then I kind of started my search based on that because I feel that Deftones has always kind of been a band that's a little bit more emotionally connected and has some heavier influences. And they've kind of like gone through maybe heavier stuff and lighter stuff and back and forth. And their past few albums have been... They actually wrote like a Love album a couple albums ago. This is like 2013, 2014.
Nice.
So I knew that was my home base and I was just going to go out there and find something, but I wanted to get a band that was a little bit newer because I think that it was a higher probability to find something that was emotionally aware, that was modern. I think that there are good metal bands out there today that are making emotionally aware metal that's not just 100% rage. And I think that so a little bit of me want to do this challenge to break the stereotype that it's just getting heavy and moshing and that there's no substance to the writing that's happening here. So
I feel like it's unfortunate because it's important to distinguish that just because someone makes music that is like, I don't know, like there was a random TikTok that I came across that's like the guy from like Disturbed. And he was just like talking to like a little kid in the crowd, and it was just like a really nice, like thoughtful conversation. Or like conversations, calling it wrong, but he was just like talking to them and sort of like talking to the crowd, doing some crowd work. And it was like, I don't really want to ever listen to Disturbed on purpose, but like, hey, there are sort of like there's intent. There is sort of like, I feel like people that are making music that are just absolutely is not for me at all. But like they can have like a lyrical or emotional depth that I feel like is at least just being like, there's a place for all kinds of music. Thanks
for the PSA, Tyler.
Yeah.
Well, does anybody want to go first this week?
I think we should go you, Tyler, me, because it feels like it develops as a genre.
Okay.
Fair enough. And my song is a little bit older. This week I chose We Gotta Know by Cro-Mags. So, We Gotta Know, classic track from metal hardcore punk fusion band Cro-Mags from 1986. This is off their debut, The Age of Quarrel. And, I was always probably going to pick something a little bit closer to hardcore than like metal, because it's just not a genre that I love. But the Venn diagrams of hardcore and metal have a big overlap, and Cro-Mags is kind of a crucial band in that. And I think this song is a great example. It's got that conscious hardcore kind of lyricism to it, where it's really direct and really focused on communicating a message. Here it's, talking about how the world is getting you down with its corruption and political oppression and climate change and all of that stuff. But then it takes kind of the like late 80s positive mental attitude hardcore angle and says, gotta break these shackles, gotta break these chains. Said the only way we'll do it is to use our brains, which is pretty emotionally aware for this time period. It's not, you better watch out, I'm gonna come beat you down, which is what other songs on this record are. Like, don't get me wrong, Cro-Mags are not bastions of like pacifism by any means, but I think this is a cool example of like how you can write a song that's fierce, that's angry, that's loud, that you can mosh to, and have a message that's emotionally aware, that's saying, all of these things that are keeping you down, all of these things that are causing you problems, feeling like you don't have a purpose to your life. It's basically saying those things are as emotional and mental and in yourself as they are outside of yourself. And so you have to work on yourself to work on the world around you. And I think that's the definition of emotional awareness. It's not making a very nuanced argument here. It's just saying, work on yourself, work on others, keep it positive.
Totally plays.
Is it metal enough? I was worried it was a little too punk.
I think when you make that, if you're looking for that distinction, you're digging into the minutia a little bit too much. I had a conflict like that too, where I was like, I don't know if one of these two songs is metal enough, but I was like, I think if you do it in the right spirit, let's just say that it's metal. I think that this track is metal sonically. When the whole first minute and a half of this song is just straight distorted sludge guitar,
right?
Chugging, it's there. I appreciated the hardcoreness of it a little bit because I think that's where the social emotional awareness part comes into it. And I love referring to the histograms of songs on YouTube because it's so funny. As soon as you get to the lyrics, it just it just goes down. Everyone just seems to fall off at that point in time. And it cracks me up that's what happens. But
the first 3 seconds don't have any words in it, and it's pretty minimal, and it just immediately falls off. That's the real one too.
I mean, I like the rawness of it. It sounds like it was recorded in a huge place.
I'm sure it's like a warehouse or something.
Yeah, and it feels it has all of the sonic metalness that you would want to hear in a metal song. And then it goes into the fast lyrics, because I actually had to listen to this a couple times and read the lyrics with it because it was just pretty difficult for me to understand. It just moves very quickly. And honestly, I think the thing that I don't like about it is it takes too long to get there.
Yeah.
I would
that's
agree
a very
with that.
metal move.
Yeah, also that.
We'll talk about that in Tyler's song, because he picks also a very metal-esque song like that. That it once you get there, you're like, okay, thank you. But I think there's a mood setting to metal that your song really picks up on, and then you get there and you're ready, and it just goes into that speed metal, thrash metal kind of feeling, and it's cool. Yeah. Do you feel like this? Do you feel like the lyrics in the song, did you connect with it? I guess that's what I'm curious about.
In a way. I mean, I listen to most of this record, and there's a lot of there's so much violence in the streets, and they're coming for us, and I don't know that I feel that.
Yeah.
But I do think
Is this 80s England? Is that?
no, it's New York.
Oh, well,
Which
New York, okay.
Makes more sense. But I don't know. I resonate with the idea of positive mental attitude in times of seemingly existential crisis.
I saw what you did there.
I'm into it. Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you look on the Wikipedia, it literally says they're one of the first bands to experiment with thrash metal, incorporating it into their punk style. So it's yeah, whatever. I also was just really hoping that we were going to be that kind of gatekeeping on this episode, because it's sort of what counts as metal. I feel like is a very we don't need to go there. But yeah, I mean, I feel like this song is still kind of I think it's interesting. This is almost kind of still sung in a dumb way, where it's just yeah, you gotta use your brain, man. But it's it's there somewhere. You're yeah, it feels very intentionally sort of I don't want to say juvenile, but sort of just there's no way
it's
to
where
say
we
this.
were at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, we've evolved our communication skills along the way. But yeah, so I mean, I feel like it gets the point across pretty successfully.
Also, the members of the band were like 22, 23 when they wrote this. So
Yeah, I wasn't saying anything important when I was 23, so
yeah, exactly, right?
yeah. We haven't featured them on the podcast before, have we?
No, I've
don't
barely
think so.
listened to them, honestly, which is
Oh.
a shame.
I mean, seems like a band to check out. I'm interested. I think it's cool enough to give it a listen. I think it's just hard enough without the vocals being like too grating. So I'm into it.
All right, so who's next?
Oh, Tyler's next. He kind of picked Wolf Mother. Did you see that?
Oh my god.
Who knew? Wolf Mother, voice of a generation. Tyler, what did you pick?
This week I chose Heavy Blanket by Ruby the Hatchet. Yeah, it's like a doom metal, doom rock, stoner rock adjacent song. Yeah, I know what it is. So I felt like
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this before you
Yeah,
start.
go
Did
ahead.
you pick it because you liked it, or did you do one of those Sean moves where you're like, well, it's a song and it fit the challenge?
So I would say that it's a little column A, a little bit of column B.
Okay.
I would say I've been trying to get this song and this band on the playlist for a very long time.
Great.
And I would say that, like, it was not necessarily like a struggle to find like a song that was like about something, but something that didn't feel like, I don't know, I feel like I was digging through like all of my stuff and I just wasn't necessarily finding the right kind of like tone. Like, I felt like things were like, I feel like I found a lot of like things that sort of like talked about things in like a very vague, sort of like a very poetic way, sort of, or it's like it was a little too like aggressive, you know. It's like, you know, it's like, oh, you know, we're gonna fight for what's yours, you know, like the world is yours, like strong like empowerment sort of like anthems. It doesn't necessarily feel like emotionally aware as I like, at least for if we're like the reading between the lines of the challenge for it. And so I feel like what this song does bring is that it brings a much more sort of like reserved and more just contemplative. You know, I feel like I think the slower pace definitely gives itself more room to breathe and to reflect on sort of like what's going on. And honestly, I just kind of like read the lyrics. I was like, oh, this is surprisingly, you know, like it's interesting enough, right? Because it's sort of like it's sort of like talking about like a relationship. It's sort of like maybe something had gone wrong, or you done something, both had done something bad, or something had, you know, some sort of like conflict in some capacity. And she's sort of saying, the narrator sort of saying, like, you know, you don't have to let this heavy blanket sort of like take, you know, like weigh you down. It's like, here, let me take it, you know, or like just like lift it off yourself. Don't let yourself be like weighed down by these problems or these things that you've done. Sort of like you can rise above and sort of you can change your ways. And so it's like, you know, I don't necessarily think that's like as emotionally aware as it could be. Like the message isn't like super like, ooh, I'm really chomping on the flavor of this one. But, you know, I think it's saying something, and I just think it's also just a really cool song because I sure do love a song that just repeats the same riff over and over again forever, and that's why that's why I like it.
Yeah, it does that. Listen, doom, stoner metal, not my favorite genre. I don't dislike it though. Like, I just need to be in a very particular mood for it. And I feel like if I were in the better mood for it today, this song would hit just right. Like, it is quintessentially what it says on the tin, right? Like, lots of organ, lots of unison riffs, real simple but real loud drumming. And I really like having female vocals on a track like this because we're so used to getting kind of like a groany male vocal on a doom track like this. So it adds a different texture that I really like. I agree lyrically. I think it fits the assignment. It does what you need it to do. It could use a little more specificity, but I think that's kind of the point, right? It's supposed to be a little bit cryptic, supposed to resonate with anybody, especially if they're enjoying some substances.
Right.
Yeah, I guess maybe the only thing I would do differently is like some kind of beat switch up in a bridge or like a stop or a change of some kind. Because it does just get a little overwhelming and it's hard to like find your place in it. But maybe that's the point. Maybe it's supposed to be kind of trance-like. I don't know.
I like this idea. I put it in my head that this is Tyler's Dragon Battle walk-up song.
Dragon Battle walk-up
because
song.
he fights with his heart. So I just felt like this would be very this fit very into the fantasy realm, and I'm glad that you brought this here because it does have. I like the stoner element of it. I'm also not a huge stoner rock fan. I don't like the endlessness of it. The just having it on and just letting it go. It's kind of boring quickly for me. But I appreciate its elegance lyrically, that it has like 2 verses and then speaks to the story. It's not literal, so you can kind of change it to match you, which is probably something you want to do when you're having an introspective stoner rock moment. And it's very sonically dense. I like the organs. I think that the bass and guitar lines work together really well. It's mixed very nicely, and the female vocalist is really cool. This was made like 8 years ago. I think I saw in 10 years ago, and I feel like it wasn't that common to find female metal vocalists that long ago. And today, I feel like in certain genres of metal, they're a lot more prevalent. And I appreciate that. And it's nice to hear a woman doing stoner metal. Like, it's refreshing. It sounds
variety,
really cool.
yeah.
And sonically, it sounds really different. And because I just think when you hear about fantasy, I just think about like long, greasy hair and like incense and marijuana smoke.
Yeah.
And I don't get the vibe from this.
Yeah.
Like I'm.
And that's also why I was like, I feel like this needs to be shared, needs to be seen, because it does. I feel like it does have a nice, refreshing, like refresh for the genre for me.
No, that's good. I agree with you. I think that's why I like it. It's.
You did good, kid.
You did good.
Didn't have to do good. I could do just okay. It's fine.
All right, Sean. That leaves you, my dude.
This week I chose Dark Bloom by We Came as Romans. So for everybody, just a trigger warning for anybody who absolutely hates screaming or doesn't like core metal or doesn't like new music at all, which is probably most people that listen to metal. This is not going to be a song for you. I appreciate that it has lots of fun drum sounds and chugging guitars and automated voices and screaming a lot, and nice quiet periods where there might be some whispering. I'm into whispering in metal too. Just it was ASMR before ASMR was a thing. I'm just saying.
But don't be funny.
Some nice whisper moments. Yeah, no. It needs to be serious. I don't like comedy in my music. We've talked about this on at least 3 episodes now, that I don't find humor in music appealing at all. In fact, I hate this podcast because it's listed as a comedy, and it's just awful. But okay, so like why I picked it was because I feel like it does a good job of speaking to some of the confusion and around feelings and the darkness that, you know, I feel like I hear a lot of people talking about now, and kind of finding the strength within yourself to prevail. And I think, like, to speak to this album too, a member of this band died a couple years ago, and this album came out last year. And I think maybe this is kind of cathartic for them too, to help move on past that challenge. Because he was like the clean vocalist, so you kind of have to find somebody to do that again, and that's probably not easy to do. And I think that they produced an album that was really, really good, and that's a testament to that. And sometimes I feel like your art is made better by the fact that it's speaks to a personal struggle that you went through, and it's something that other people can relate to, and I appreciate that. So that's why I chose it. That's why I thought it was emotionally aware, but it had all those fun metal influences that I like.
Man, this is a lot. Not the same vibes as my song at all.
Uh-huh.
Like, this is kind of the stuff that I think, like, when people think about metal nowadays, they think about stuff like this, probably. Mm-hmm. But metal is all of the things we've talked about tonight, and like 10,000 other different subgenres that sound quite different. The thing that I think impressed me about this one is the vastness of it. Like, the addition of synthesizers and the reverb and just the wall of sound production here, like, it just feels big in a way that the other 2 songs we've talked about tonight haven't. And I think that makes me feel more okay with the emphasis on the dirty vocals or the screamed vocals, because there's a lot of textures going on. And it's like in the mix as an instrument almost, as much as it is a vocal technique, which is kind of cool. Like, I feel like sometimes when you have a band like this, they over index on the vocals and they like put it too high in the mix and it drowns everything out. But here, it feels like it's complementing, and like the emotions expressed in the lyrics are being reinforced by the instrumentation in a real way that you don't always hear. Yeah, this is really, really polished. Like, again, not my genre, but Game Recognized Game, this is super duper well done.
Yeah. I appreciate that perspective, Taylor, because I don't know, I feel like sometimes I don't necessarily know if I can like hear the production side of things, and I feel like I think that's something that's so essential but important to understand, like, the overall sound of a song, because you're right that because listening to it like right now, it's sort of like you really do feel you're sort of like in an environment, and I think that's adds some like level of like fantasy to it, or adds like creates some like level of like not necessarily fantasy, but like fantasy in the sense of like you can imagine a space. I mean, I feel like I'm in the middle, usually in between Taylor and Sean, where I'm like, I can take it or leave it some days, and I'm like, this is fine, like I think I'm like, I don't know if I can listen to the whole album. Depends on how good the whole album is. Have you listened to this album, Sean?
Yeah.
Good the whole way through? Can you listen to the whole thing?
I'm not a back-to-back. Like, there's not a lot of albums that I'm a back-to-back on.
Okay.
But I think you get that feeling that you have about being surrounded with the music is consistent amongst not only this album, but amongst metalcore in general.
Yeah. Now, also, We Came as Romans. That name...
They've been around for a minute.
I was like, this is like a legacy band. Like, what's like an old song? Like, what's like, because I don't know if I recall like what the Queen vocals also sounded like. Oh, okay. So let's do about a second of that. I think this definitely does come together as a package a little bit better in the year of our Lord 2023. I feel like, because sometimes there's something about the sort of like dual like clean dirty vocals that like, I don't want to say feels dated, but it feels like it has, I don't know, it just doesn't necessarily, I feel like, always hit the same, like the way I wanted to, like now than it did back then. And I feel like this is sort of like similar to kind of the vibe that Bring Me the Horizon kind of took with her previous album, where it was sort of like a little bit of just a really rough, gruff type of sound rather than like a literal like scream the whole time. And I like it. I think I like it. Yeah, it's good. And obviously, lyrics are good. Fits a challenge easy. Probably like, I would say that these are definitely the kind of dudes that are making music right now that I feel like when you also would say like, are they writing about something, about like a personal experience? It's usually like from like, I feel like in the metal space is usually like sort of like these sorts of sounds. I feel like they're usually coming from these types of groups. So I feel like cool, tight. They got a lot of feelings.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in that sense, this challenge was probably a mixture of low-hanging fruit and like an underhanded throw to kind of get a nice hit out into the field, because it was just, it didn't ask much of you. I think it asked more of you to find something that you actually wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
And because even I felt like, oh, I have something for this. This will be easy. And then I spent a lot of time on Sunday just kind of going through playlists trying to find something that I actually kind of liked. That I was happy with talking to, instead of just being like, well, here it is. And it talks
right.
about my feelings, and this band's called Hawthorne Heights. It's just this. But luckily for us this week, there were lots of other people that wanted to speak to this, unlike 245, which we had one submitter, even though it was not my fault for not reading what it was, but they're still here. So this week is 246, Emotionally Aware Metal. These are listener suggestions. 71 DPI. My gut says something by Trans-Siberian Orchestra. I'm assuming not the Christmas stuff.
No.
Oh, really? The Christmas stuff?
Well, do they have stuff other than the Christmas stuff?
Yeah. No, they do. They have
okay.
like lots of albums. I don't listen to them, but they're there. And then finishing the comment, I look forward to hearing what the fuck you all think that means. Well, good. We gave it to you before we actually went there. I actually went to Trans-Siberian Orchestra one year with Katie's family.
I've heard they put on a great show.
The first part was weird. I wasn't expecting there to be such a strong Christian message.
Oh. Huh.
We'll put it that way. But the back half was what you see on the commercials, and that was really cool. I was kind of like, I'm here for the music. I like my church and my rock to be a little separate. So that's why, I just love a little pipe organ and a little choral music. It's kind of how I roll. Oh, with that, Julian Seth picked Symbolic by Death. I've heard of this band. Not super
great band
with them, but yeah. Bears Anon picked Bleed by Meshuggah.
Let's go.
I don't know.
Oh,
did it.
this could have been the week.
No, it could have been, but everybody knows that's like a frowned upon song for us to pick. It's a bad look.
Listen, when we finally pick Bleed by Meshuggah, that's when you know this podcast is on its last leg.
Rory Snake picked Dance Macabre by Ghost, which I think actually I put a Ghost song on here for another metal challenge probably at some point in time.
Buddy. You did. It wasn't just me.
Did you put a Ghost song on here too?
Yeah, oh yeah. Deus in Absentia forever ago. It was like one of the first 10 episodes, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay. Okay, sweet. Ivan, hey buddy, picked, to me, Alice in Chains is kind of a straddling the grunge and metal line. I would say Rooster by them would count. Yeah. No, that works. I'm not going to be the police here and say that something doesn't fit. I mean, there was one instance where I thought about correcting Tyler because he said Blink-182, and I was just thought... No,
not a metal band.
Absolutely not.
No.
Specifically not a metal band.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to be clear, I knew they were not, but,
And then I excellent picked... I don't... they left a comment, so let's go through the comment real quick. I don't like the weird implication here, LOL. Emotionally mature here means not fantasy metal. Bummers only.
I think that's a fair critique. I'll take that. We did specifically call that out and say that didn't count.
Did anybody come across like a happy happy emotional metal song? Because I have an example. But I just want to
I did not.
One of my B-sides was The Spell of Mathematics by the Deftones, which is actually a love song, like a very emotionally aware love song that is very, very heavily done. And I almost picked it, but I don't think that this is what I mean. 2023 is not another year of Sean picking Deftones and the Queens of the Stone Age for everything. There are other good bands out there that are making contemporary music. But yes, so there's that. Is the line under there from them as well?
Yes.
Okay, so let me continue with the next part after Bummers Only. Said it feels like don't suggest things like 3 Inches of Blood or Baby Metal. They always seem like teenage boys' lyrics when I read them out loud. That's probably right. Yes. Maybe we should have like a challenge at some point in time that's like lyrics that are wise beyond their age. Because I promise you there won't be a metal song on that week.
Yeah, it's gonna be all singer-songwriter.
Yeah, like it's
maybe some hip hop.
Yeah, it's not gonna be that way, and you are completely correct in saying that this challenge probably does have an inkling towards the naive side of stuff, but maybe would it feel, and let me ask this generally, would it feel super fake if all of a sudden you were listening to metal and it started sounding like Father John Misty?
I think so. I think part of writing in that style is not writing with a ton of complexity. Like, I think the ability to distill complex ideas down to simple lyrics is a gift that some metal and hardcore and punk, etc. songwriters have. But frankly, it's the sign of a bad songwriter when they do ramble on like Father John Misty at 200 beats per minute or whatever the standard hardcore tempo is.
I mean,
because at that point you're just yelling spoken word, and like, I guess there's a place for that, but it's not what I'm after.
Also, to be fair, when you're screaming, you're trying to say as little words as possible, just to preserve the old chords.
Not wrong.
It lends itself to poetic lyrics.
Yeah, as I mixed up an analogy one time, the cat that burns on both ends meows half as long. So just think about that when you're screaming one time. So with that, it's time for our B-sides. These were songs that were very close to getting on here but didn't quite make it. What do you guys got this week?
Aimless Arrow by Converge.
Oh, went right to the Converge.
The latter Converge I'm into. The earlier stuff, not so much. Perseverance by Hatebreed, a band I had never heard of.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know how I hadn't heard of them.
They've been around forever.
I know. And then I had one other Cro-Mag song, which was Malfunction.
I had a few different things I was kind of playing around with. Most things by Lingua Ignota, but I feel like that's just taking you to church in a different way. There's like a few tracks from the Devin Townsend Project's album Epic Cloud that I feel like were really cool and big and epic. But I feel like we're too abstract. There's also sort of like a legacy band called Cynic that I felt like was really cool and really interesting, but I felt like lyrically they're a little too vague, a little too sort of like telling a story rather than being about something, about like a message or whatever. Arch Enemy, The World Is Yours, as usual. I'm all, it's gonna be on there eventually. Oh, that's right, and Aspiration by After the Burial, which is another ancient 2008 song that's just stuck with me forever, and I almost chose it just so it could get it out of my system, but I said not yet. It's not the right time.
And then I have a few this week. I have The Hellfire Club by Thornhill, Screaming by Loathe, Spit by Poppy, Retroscope by Spirit Box, and then interesting, what I found in all of this was a song called Take Shape featuring Billy Corgan by Code Orange. Look at Billy Corgan going out there getting on that new metal stuff.
Look at him go.
Mm-hmm.
He's everywhere. Well, Tyler, if people want to share some feelings with you, where can they do that?
Hey everybody, you can find my design and illustration work at rudepets.club. As always, you can find me on the socials as Rude Pets Club on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter.
Sean, where can people plumb the depths of your rage?
You can find me on Instagram at TellySean. And Taylor, if people want to see if they can make their Fender chorus pedal chug, where can they find you at?
Find me on Instagram and Threads at TC Olmstead. All of these songs will be on the official No Repeat podcast playlist. And we'll be back next week with another episode of No Repeat.